Hi, everyone. My name is Mickey Hudson, and I am doing the Husqvarna Viking Facebook Live today. So, as usual, I will give you guys a few minutes to come in and settle down. I want to say hi to everybody. And I also want to remind everyone not to click on any links and if they ask for personal information, please report it because you will not get any links from us that ask for personal information, money, credit card, any of that. We will be posting a link for a survey at the end, but again, that asks for no personal information. But what that does do is we're trying to get some feedback from y'all so that we can better improve your experience during these Facebook Lives. So please do us a favor. Even if you've done it before, please click the survey link and fill it out. It's a couple of questions. And again, we're trying to help you have a better experience. So welcome, everyone. For those of you that are just joining, my name is Mickey Hudson. This is Husqvarna Viking Facebook Live. Today, we're going to be talking about how to teach new sewers or kids how to sew. And if you're a new sewer yourself, there might be some really great tips in here for you as well. I would like, as always, to say hi to my behind the scenes crew, Thomas, Meredith, and Ryan. Thanks, guys. They help quite a bit with these Facebook Lives when we host them. So I am available for questions. I am a questions girl. I like to answer questions, so feel free to ask anything that you can. But we are going to start the discussion with how to teach kids. So this comes up a lot, and so this is why we have decided to do it. And when it comes to teaching children, one thing that we tend to forget is comfort. So there's times where the kids just want to jump in and sew, just, kind of help you while you're doing it, and they're just going to do for a few minutes. But if they're going to actually sit down and sew a project, then that's when we want to deal with the comfort. And there's a couple of ways to do that because we're sitting at the big tables and the big chairs, even if it's at our kitchen. And with the kids, they're sitting there with their feet dangling and not in a very good position. There's some really, really easy ways to take care of that. For instance, I used to teach a kids sewing class quite a bit. I did it for a long time. And I'm going to back up for a minute. I often get asked how old should your children be when you start them sewing? Some people go by the adage that once they can read, then they can follow a pattern and sew. I am in a different category. I am in the category if they're interested in sitting at the machine and sewing, get them sitting at the machine and sewing. They don't need to follow directions to get started. That will come later. But making sure they're comfortable is very important. Now, when I taught my kids class, the youngest student that I had, I can't remember if she was 3 or 4, but her name is Eliza. And Eliza, if you're watching, she's all probably grown and married by now, but I will never, ever forget her. But she was very, very young. And so it was all about making her comfortable because the other kids were a little bit older and we had chairs for them. One of the things that we did was we made a booster seat for her. And so the booster seat, this is made out of old drywall insulation boards. So you can go to like your hardware store. They may even have just little scraps left over. And I just duct taped them together. What I like about them is because you're sitting, it's very firm and sturdy, and you can make it whatever size you need. And it's it's great as a booster seat versus books and stuff like that, which can shift. The other thing is when they're sitting in their chair, they should be able to set their feet on the floor with the foot pedal. That's not always possible with the little legs. So you can use, for that, I use styrofoam. So you can pull out styrofoam from boxes that you've been, that have been shipped to you. You can pull out, go to the craft store. Styrofoam is very inexpensive. And again, just duct tape them together until you have the height that you need. And that all their angles should be around 90 degrees. Ideally, it's 90 degrees. It is harder for kids, but the closer we can get to having our arms at 90 degrees and our knees at 90 degrees, the more comfortable that it is going to be for all of them. For you as well, because, kids, they like to complain when they're uncomfortable. So I'm going to set this down. So any questions about that so far? Okay. Another thing when it comes to teaching kids is, make it fun, make it easy, and simple projects that they can finish quickly. One of the very first things that I like to start out with when they get serious about working on a project is I start them on mazes. So there's quite a few of coloring book pages that are downloadable, that are free, and they just say, here, have it, print it, all that kind of stuff. So there's just quite a few that you can get that are readily available. I do recommend to kind of watch out for those that have the ink marks on them, anything that wants you to pay. You may know of a way to get around that and print it off and stuff, but I prefer to stay away from anything that's copyrighted or requires royalties or anything like that. There is plenty of free stuff without any strings attached to start tangling with the big boys who want their money. So, like I said, there's quite a few different kind of mazes that you can get. I've seen quite a few that cater to boys, some that cater to girls. So depending on whomever you are teaching. One of the nice things about this, and you can get the straight curves, you can get the curvy curves, or you can even draw just a spiral or lines, or you can even have them do it. And then they can just stitch. On this case, I would just have them stitch right on the line there. In the mazes, I have them start at one end and work their way through to the other. But what this does, let me get you over here. And if you are a new sewer yourself, this is a great exercise to do as well, because it does help with pivoting and turning corners. And especially if you're going to be tracing lines and stuff like that, I'm going to go ahead and do the spiral. And the nice thing, too, is you don't even need thread in here. If you have, like, the felting kit, there's a little bobbin case that's empty, and you can just pop that in there and have no thread on top, because the holes will be plenty for them to be able to see what it is that they're doing. So when it comes to sewing these, it's just like taking their time. Just take your time and let them just stitch right on the line. And if they need to learn how to pivot, you can teach them either to use your function buttons if you have a machine with function buttons. The Husqvarna Viking machines, if you tap the foot pedal, it will drop the needle. And so then they can turn to pivot or turn to corner, whatever they need to do. So it's a great way to practice, and it's fun. They don't even realize that they're practicing something. It's just they're just having fun with the sewing machine. So that is one way to get them started and playing and getting into precision and accuracy. So any questions about the mazes and stuff like that? Okay. So one of the other things that I like to do or talk about is safety. So when it comes to stitching, there is a safety guide for your foot. So let me see if I saved that page right quick. I did. I'm a good girl. All right. So I'm going to bring this over. There is a safety needle guard. So if you are really concerned about working with children, there is a safety guard that sits in front of the needle, and it does prevent little fingers getting in there. So if you like that little extra bit of safety, that is quite helpful. Now, I've worked with my grandson. I think I sat him down the first time where he wanted to see what I was doing when he was around 2. And when it comes to safety, is we keep our hands on the side of the fabric. So whatever's going on, his hands are off, away from the needle. And if he starts creeping in, as kids do, we stop, put his hands back into a good position so that he can keep his fingers right out of the way. Now, when they're very, very young, they have a very short attention span. When he first started sitting with me at the machine, he would often just sew like 3 or 4 inches and they'd be fine and he'd be off on playing with his sister. And his sister does the same thing. They'll just come, want to push a button, want to sew a little bit, and then they're fine. As they get older, they may starting to want more project-based, but keeping their hands out of the way. And that's kind of the supervisor's job, whether you're mom, grandma, aunt, uncle, or just sewing with kids. Your job is really the supervisor. Teach them how to get in a good position and then let them do it. Your job is just to keep their hands from doing this. So every time they start creeping in, you just have to remind them to put their hands to the side. The other thing, too, that you notice is I have a nice flat surface. I really, really recommend this. And if you've ever heard me watched any of my Facebook Lives, you know how much I recommend a flat surface. This happens to be a cabinet where I can sink my machine and they send a plexiglass to fit around the machine. But if you don't have this luxury, because for years I sat on my kitchen table. There are, as Husqvarna Viking has a quilter's extension table that is clear plexiglass, and you can set it up on top of a table and it'll give you this flat surface. One of the reasons that I recommend this, I'm going to go ahead and pop this out for just a moment so that you can see, is when we're sewing. Now, I don't have my accessory tray on, but even with my accessory tray on, you'll still be able to see the issue. So when you start to sew, what happens is everything now in front has weight. So that little weight, even if it's just a little bit, it's going to be interfering with the feed dogs and the machine doing its job. We want the fabric to flow nice and smooth. And as soon as we get weight here, now we're starting to have to be a little more in control. And the same is when it gets to the other side, we now have weight on the back that is also going to start pulling. So when we have the flat surface or the table, it holds quite the bulk of the fabric. So now the fabric is flat and the machine can do their job. So the Husqvarna Viking, no matter what model you have, can do a better job with a flat surface. So, and it's really much easier for the kids. So any questions about that? Okay. So when it comes to simple projects, if you were to do a Google search for simple sewing projects for kids, there are tons of them. Everything from pillowcases to little stuffed animals, skirts, backpacks, really, really simple stuff that they can usually do within an hour or less. And with Eliza, my youngest student, she really did have a particularly good attention span for her age. I could usually get about 45 minutes out of her. And one of her favorite things to do was we would just get a strip of fabric, and it was usually from her waist to her knees. And then I would add a couple inches for a hem and add a couple of inches for a casing. And that is what we did. So we just had by the width of the fabric and folded up a little hem for her. And she would stitch that hem so straight. She was so slow and straight. And then we would make the casing and sew it together. And 45 minutes later, she was modeling her little skirt just all over. She was just so cute. But yeah, she would just model it all over the classroom. So just simple little projects. Shorts, pajama bottoms, very, very quick and easy. Give something that they're prideful of and that they can finish very quickly. So any questions about any of that? Come on, guys, you got to have some questions. All right. So the next thing that we're going to talk about is kind of moving into patterns. So we're kind of moving out of kids, although kids can still do these kind of things, but we're kind of moving out of the small. Oh, no, we're not. Another thing that you can do with the small children is, my grandson is fascinated with I have a granddaughter too, but my grandson is the one that is fascinated with the sewing machine. Every time it's running, he comes running over and wanting to see it. My granddaughter, I'm hoping, will show more interest, but right now she's still interested in her dolls. But one of the things when it comes to Husqvarna Viking, we have the ability to tap into MySewNet. Now, don't get scared. I'm not going to talk about software and stuff like that. But no matter what machine you have, if you have an embroidery machine, go to mysewnet.com, create a free account. It's free. You will get access to a basic software. You get access to the apps, and you get 100 megabytes of free storage for your designs and other things. But one of the free apps is really fun for children, and that's why I'm going to show it. Please be signed in. No, of course not. Let me see if you're signed in on this one. Good. Okay. So one of the free apps that is available is called Quick Design. So right on the MySewNet website, if you go to downloads, there's a whole list of the downloadable apps that you can get. Quick Design and the JoyOS Advisor, those are two that are beneficial for anyone. The MySew Monitor is required. You do need a MySewNet Wi-Fi capable machine to use the MySew Monitor. But the Quick Design and the JoyOS Advisor, tons of good stuff in there. Information, helpful hints, lessons, how-tos, etc. But the Quick Design, if you are unfamiliar, will allow you to take a picture. And we're going to take this gorgeous picture of the underneath of my chin, which we all know is so attractive. So what it does is it will turn it into a quick embroidery. So we have a scatter stitch. We have dense and kind of light. The denser one, of course, takes a little longer. This is not going to work very well with this image, but we have a satin stitch, light and heavy. And we also have a line art, so light and heavy. So no matter what you want to do, it's very quick and easy to turn design or pictures or drawings into cute embroidery. Now, I did a satin stitch. My grandson drew a picture, and I was able to take it into the MySewNet app, the Quick Design. And then once you save it, there's a little heart right at the bottom. When you're ready, you save it, and it goes to that cloud, and you get 100 megabytes of storage with the free account. So from there, you can download it and use it on any machine you like. But here I took one of my grandson's artwork. Now, this is the one we made for the sample. There's another one that he got. But it's a simple drawing. That's him and his cat. And I just use that quick app to turn it into a quick little project and quite the kick out of it. So really, really fun little projects that you can do with kids. The other thing too is if you're going to embroider with them, I really highly recommend the metal hoops. There's 3 different sizes. One of the things that makes this so great for the kids is they can hoop it themselves. So they can just lay their stabilizer, they can lay their project, and they can toss their magnets down and they're ready to embroider. Okay. Can't believe I almost forgot that. That's like my favorite part. Okay. So let's talk about patterns for a moment. So if you are a new sewer yourself, or if you are trying to help a new sewer and you're following the sewing pattern, this is where you kind of want to take a break and give them a lesson. Now, I like to keep sewing really fun for the kids. I don't like to turn anything into a lesson where they have to do this. I'd rather them just get their hands on it and grow into the lessons. But if you are going to follow a pattern, this can get a little confusing. So you do want to help them to break down what's happening. So you're going to take their measurement, get their measurements and find what they want to do, and then kind of come to the point, and that will tell them the yardage. The important thing that I always tell when I'm teaching a new sewer is when you're going to purchase a pattern, one of the most important things to do is to pay attention to their fabric recommendations. So it doesn't matter if you know how to break the rules. I highly recommend to learn the rules before you start breaking them. And when it comes to the sewing patterns, they have taken the time to give you the recommendation because you're going to get the best results with these fabrics that they have chosen. After a while, these become more of suggestions because you'll start learning how you can change the pattern to accommodate a knit instead of a woven, for example, or to change for heavier fabrics and lighter fabrics. But when you're starting, follow their instructions because they're there to help you. Okay. Another thing when it comes to especially with clothing, is the sizes. So you really want to go by your measurements and not what you buy in the store. So first of all, especially for women, I find this true. You can go to 10 different stores and buy a size 10 and lay them on top of each other, and you can lay them off from large to small because they're all 10, but they're all different sizes. It's very frustrating. These sizes are the actual sizes of the projects. These are what the fashion industry uses, is these numbers. And these numbers have not changed since like World War I. What the stores do is what's called vanity sizing. That is a very good question. I got a question. What are good patterns, brands that size well? I am going to address that because I do have a good recommendation and something to look for. But one of the things when we're talking about these sizes is you may go into a store and you may normally wear around a size 10. If you go to Target, for instance, and you buy a size 10, you'll probably get a good size 10. If you go to Neiman Marcus and get a size 10, your size 10 might be a size 8. And if you go to Rodeo Drive in Beverly Hills and get your size, it might be a size 4. Because the prices have gone up as you go into the more elite companies. And that's called vanity sizing. They're all still the same size. They just put a smaller number inside to make you feel better about spending more money. So when I make my own clothes, I wear a size 2. I can put whatever number in this I want. So I just wear a size 2. So when it comes to patterns, there are two kinds of patterns. You can either get what I call from the Fab Four. There's actually five, but the Fab Four: Vogue, Simplicity, Butterick, McCall's. Berta is the fifth one. But these are the most common brands: Vogue, Simplicity, Butterick, McCall's. And to be honest, these are the ones that I are not my personal favorite for real people size. So they're fine back in the day when I used to be closer to the size right out of there and I didn't have to alter it. But as soon as I started aging and things started changing and I had to do more alterations to these patterns, the less I liked them. Another thing too is what's really interesting is I got to tour the Butterick pattern company once in New York City. And it's very interesting to me how the instructions are written. And it really explained why sometimes you get one of these and the instructions are phenomenal. And sometimes you get some of these and the instructions are like, I don't know what they're talking about. Because there's no set formula to writing the instructions. There is a set formula to making the pattern pieces. So those are always consistent. But it's really hard to write this many patterns because there's so many different things that go into various garments and crafts and stuff like that. So there's nothing wrong with the Fab Four, but my personal thing that I like to look for, and to answer your question, is independent pattern companies. Now, an independent pattern company are those that write their own patterns, and you'll find them everywhere from the little free crafts that you can get to clothing. And one of the things that I like to look at when I'm looking for an independent pattern company is this little symbol here. This stands for the Independent Pattern Company Alliance. And it's the IPCA. And if you see this on a pattern, what that means is this person is not just interested in selling patterns, and she's not interested. She is interested in creating successful sewers. So they've taken what the Independent Pattern Company Alliance does is they take the extra step to test the pattern. So if you create a pattern, you can say, I want to be part of the Independent Pattern Company Alliance. And then you send your pattern and instructions to them, and they will send it out to a variety of people. I've been a test pattern sewer, and you're given the pattern, given the instructions with questionnaires and all that kind of stuff. And they do different categories. So there's like the expert, there's the intermediate, and then there's the, I think this is a sewing machine. I think I'm going to sew today. So they've got all of the levels in there. They get this feedback. They take all that feedback and redesign the pattern to get the best, so that by the time the pattern is printed and sold, they have worked out all the kinks and everything. The instructions are clear. The pattern sizes are good. Everything is really good. There are a few that I like for a variety of different things. This is one of my favorites. I happen to be a certified Islander instructor myself, but I love her patterns. They go from, extra small to 4 to 5X, depending on the pattern. So there's quite a variety in there, and they require very little modification. So like the Fab Four, for instance, I always have to adjust my shoulders, because when they scale up to make a bigger size, I can answer. So the question came up, how to be a tester. I can answer that later. I'll let you know. I'll put you in contact with the person who is, if she's still president. I think she's still president, but I'll put you in contact with her. But one of the things is, so like when I do the Fab Four, I always have to adjust my shoulders, because when they scale up a pattern, they just make it bigger. And what happens is when you get fluffy like myself, I'm not getting bigger in my bones. I'm getting bigger in my fleshy areas. So my shoulders aren't getting wider because I've gained weight. My shoulders are relatively the same size. And so a lot of the independent pattern companies, and especially those with the IPCA brand label on it, when they scale up, they keep that in mind. So like I never have to alter my shoulders in any of these patterns, for instance. So I love that. And the other thing is when it comes to instructions. So again, if I go to the Fab 4, and I'll just pull out some instructions here. Forgive me while I unfold it. This is a very simple pattern, but let me take a look here. So when they're talking about doing some of these instructions, they have the nice little drawings and they are trying to help you as much as possible. But take a look at these pattern instructions. Okay. Very, very clear on which is the right side and the wrong side. The instructions are so clear. There's tons of tips. And the other thing about an independent pattern company alliance is they will often have videos, for instance, to help you with particularly tricky bits. So for instance, on this one, there's for a welt pocket, even though the instructions are extremely clear and easy to follow, you still can go to their YouTube channel and get a video just on this so that you can get some help. She also does do sew-alongs as well. And a lot of independent pattern companies will do that. Going, here's my pattern, let's have a little sew-along, and they'll kind of have a video and walk you right through it, which I love. So I wasn't always at this level. I was a beginner once. And so it was, some of those helpful tips were very, very easy. And I've always been a fan of the Independent Pattern Company Alliance. So there's quite a few companies that do that. But if you look for that brand, that little mark on the pattern, that means that this particular pattern went above and beyond to make the pattern helpful for you because they want you to be successful. What did I do with it? Okay, there it is. In the Fab 4, one thing that you will get, and this is very helpful to any new sewer, and it's often overlooked, and that is this general directions here. So even if you just cut this out, laminate it, keep it handy, these are icons and stuff that you will see on all kinds of different patterns, seam allowance, etc. So there's helpful little tips to what all these kind of things mean when they're using specific verbiage. You know what they're talking about. And so this is quite helpful to have around. And that is what I did back in the day when I was new, is I just cut this out and kept it handy. So it was very helpful. So any other questions about patterns? The other thing too about the patterns is, especially with the Fab 4, they're open. And that is so that you can pull out the instructions and take a look. A little key thing to keep in mind is the more pattern pieces that you have, the more difficult the pattern is going to be. So if you're looking for a kid's pattern, anything with like 2 or 3 pieces is going to be fairly easy. And then the more advanced you get, the more pieces there are. So how do you get to those patterns? So they're sometimes sold in with your dealer. Your dealer can get a lot of them, like the Islander sewing systems can be ordered through your dealer. Sometimes the chain stores will carry them, or you can go online and look up the company, or you can Google independent pattern companies. You can Google Independent Pattern Company Alliance, and it'll get a list of the companies that are listed with them, and that kind of thing. So there's a couple of different ways that you can get them. It'll come back around. Hold on a second. I had a thought and it just went out of my head, and it'll come back around. Yes, I agree. The Islander jackets are great. They're super easy. Okay, so now if we move on to quilters, when it comes to teaching quilting, so if we don't have any more questions about clothing, I'll talk about quilters. If you still have questions about clothing, feel free to ask them. I'm not trying to cut you off. But if you think of something, go ahead and ask. But when it comes to quilting, now I was guilty of this when I started teaching quilting back in the day, is I wanted my students to do the most fabulous kind of quilts that I could possibly think of. And it was often overwhelming for them. So I learned the hard way, and much to the chagrin of my students, that simple is best when it's starting to teach quilting. Because quilting is all about getting your seams straight and your points to line up and all of that kind of stuff. So it's best to take it slow and master those basics. And then you can just take on the world. But there are quite a few what I call quilting Bibles that are basic, simple patterns. They're very good instructions, and they're great references when you want to go back. So the very first quilt that I ever made following what is still my Bible is the Log Cabin Quilts, Eleanor Burns Quilt in a Day. What I like about this and why I like to teach this as a first quilt is you're just working with long strips of fabric and mastering that sewing that 1/4 of an inch seam well before we start tackling the cross corners. So once we have our blocks, by then, if we've gotten a handful of blocks, we will have gotten a pretty good handle on sewing a good 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Then we can tackle the corners, getting our corners to line up and our cross seams to line up. And then once we've got that, then we can do everything. But there's a good variety of helpful tips on just verbiage and how things kind of go, and battings and fabrics and all kinds of fun stuff. So this I referred to when I was new quite a bit. This is actually the second book I've gotten, because I wore my first one out because I referenced it so much. So when it comes to teaching beginner quilting, keep it simple. Let your student learn the basics, the fundamentals of it. Then you can take them on the wild journey, because it doesn't take long. My adage is it takes about 10 minutes to teach you how to quilt, and then you're going to spend the rest of your life mastering it. But it's those first 10 minutes of learning the fundamentals that is going to reflect on everything else. So I do like to keep it simple for the first. Like I said, I learned that the hard way. Okay. All righty. So are there any other questions? I think I covered all my material a little quickly. So are there any questions? Come on, people, I need some questions. When it comes to teaching hand sewing, now I don't have the ideal setup here. Been busy, haven't been able to get to the store. But a good long tapestry needle, because a tapestry needle is larger and it usually doesn't have a super sharp point. It has a sharp point, but not so sharp. There are some tapestry needles that are completely dull. Those are the ones you want to avoid. But they do have a large eye for easy threading. I use a heavier thread to make it easier for the kids. That is quite the complex question. So One of the questions, back to clothing, is there a good way to alter patterns? There are quite a few good educators out there that alter patterns, but one of my personal favorite is Joy Mahon, Joi, last name Mahon, Mahon. And she has a very unique breakdown of the body. And so she works in quadrants, and it's so much easier to me than working the full body. But I will always say this, there's quite a few, if you look up pattern alterations classes, there's quite a few videos and stuff that you can see. Try a couple of little from each of them. Find what works best for you, because what works best for me may not work best for you. But definitely add Joy Mahon to your list of purviews, because she is quite good. All right, I lost one of the questions, so let me scroll down. Well, thank you. She was just going to glance at the class, and then I sucked her in because I do that. I'm teaching 3 teen boys how to sew. We have the sewing pattern for pajama pants. Should I give them a list of notions, tools, or let them take turns with mine? So that's a good question. If they are going to sew on their own away from you, definitely get them a little good starter kit with, good quality stuff without breaking the bank. If you can turn it into a prize, especially if you're teaching them together, once they've completed the pajama pants and they have to put them on and pose for pictures, then they can have the kit. That's another way to do. You can, especially with teenage boys, and everything's a competition. So you could turn it into a competition. Who can sew the straightest, who can sew, this, that. Stay away from the fastest, because then they can get sloppy. But whoever can sew the straightest and whoever can do this, and then give them little prizes to start building their own kit. Yeah, teenagers tend to be a little competitive, so you can have some fun with that. I am fluffy and very short-waisted, so I always have to shorten the waist. There is a petite pattern company out there. Once this is over, I will come and answer these more specifics with some real direction. But there is a petite pattern company. It's an independent pattern company that I like, and I'll give you the information for that. So back to hand sewing. Now, if you know me, if you've seen me in person, or if you've seen me on these before, I would rather chew off my arm than have to hand sew. I am the type that will spend 9 hours trying to figure out how to do it on the machine versus the 5 minutes it would have taken me to do it by hand. Because if I can figure out how to do it on a machine, I never have to do it by hand again. But hand sewing is a good fundamental skill to learn as well. Now, I grew up hand sewing. So, I mean, it's not that I don't know how to do it. It's just I don't like it. Now, I am using wool because, like I said, I couldn't get to the store. My recommendation for teaching hand sewing is usually felt, because it is very porous and it's easy to work with. So a large needle, hand sewing, and teaching them how to sew. Now here I actually marked stitch points so that I can help teach them to get into a regular routine. I have seen some instructors just put a couple Sharpies right on their fingers, and that way when they're working, they have their little marks on their fingers to keep their pattern, their stitch positions nice and even. So learning the consistency. So they're not going to be even at beginning, and you just keep encouraging them and all that kind of stuff, because the more they do it, the more even that they will get. When it comes to teaching left-handed people how to hand sew, if you're right-handed and you're trying to teach somebody left-handed how to sew, to hand sew, this can get tricky. So one of the tricks that I've learned is, instead of sitting next to them like you would with a fellow righty or a fellow lefty, if you're the opposite dominant hand, sit opposite from them where you're facing each other. So that way you're kind of mirroring each other, and that does help. Or if you're really dedicated, like I did, I actually learned how to do all the basic hand stitches with my left hand so that I could show my students that were left-handed how to sew. But that was just me. It's crazy. Working opposite works just as well. Okay. So any other questions about anything? But when it comes to the kids, it is nice if you can take them shopping or give them a theme, especially with the teen boys. It's like, what's going to be your theme this week? And then you can go get fabric accordingly, or teach them how to pick out good fabric. That's another thing. Are there any other questions? We're going to finish a little bit early, I think. All right, so to review, good patterns, patience, especially with kids, work at their speed. We want to make the kids as comfortable as possible, being at the 90 degrees as much as they can. And let them, the thing is, even if you're in the middle of something and they want to sew, just let them come in and join you, because they're usually only want to sew for a few minutes and then they're off and running again. So I never, turn them away. So if I'm at their house and I'm sewing and they come over and they want to pop in and sew with me, I'm never going to turn them away. My grandson especially is starting to get to the age where we're going to start working on projects and start planning them out. But I will sit down with him and we'll look through Google and we'll let him he will get to pick out his project that he wants to start with. So one of the things too is we have another Facebook Live coming up, and I'm sure my crew will remind me of the topic. But I do want to remind you of the survey. So it will be coming at the end, and you will see it pop up. Please, please go ahead and click on that. It's not going to ask for any personal information. We just want some feedback from you because, once again, we are trying to better these for you. What is a good age to do a group of 3 to 6 kids? If you're going to do a classroom setting, then that's where the adage comes, when they're old enough to read a pattern. So even if it's just a simple pattern, once they're old enough to read a pattern, you can sit them in a classroom. Because if they can't read, then they're going to require so much of your attention that 3 to 6 kids is going to be very stressful. So what is the date on that? So we're going to have our next Facebook Live is going to be which machine is right for you. So she's going to be reviewing the different Husqvarna Viking machines because there are those of us that like all the bells and whistles. There are some of us that want as many bells and whistles as we can afford. And there's some that are, I am new to sewing, but I want to get the best machine without breaking the bank. So there's going to be all kinds of helpful information for which machine is right for you. That will be March 2nd, and that will be with Karen Charles. Same time, same channel. But I want to thank you all for coming. I know we're finishing a few minutes early. I will be back to answer some of those questions in the comments that I wasn't able to. Oh, that was what I want to talk about, the feet. And okay, so don't stay in your seat. I got a few more minutes. So so when it comes to the 5/8 inch seam allowance, The Fab Four, for instance, always use the 5/8 inch seam allowance. The independent pattern companies, their seam allowances may vary because you're going to get a better result with different seam allowances. And in the fashion industry, for instance, they use all kinds of different seam allowances for all varying things. So, but if you're going to be working with the Fab Four, there are a couple of feet that are available, and you can find them in the owner's, the accessory guide. Oh, it was right here. I just had it. So here's one that is really helpful with the seam allowances. So it's the Clear Seam Guide Foot, and it has all these little markings on it. I don't know if you can see. It has all these little markings on them. And each mark is like 1/4 of an inch, 3/8, 1/2 inch. And then at the 5/8 inch, there's actually a little blade on the side. This is not a cutting blade. This is just a guiding blade. So you can butt your fabric right up against it. So this is one option that's really, really good. The other option is the little seam guide magnets. And these are awesome. You heard that. So it's a very strong magnet, so it will pop down. You can put it at whatever seam that you want, and then you can just butt your fabric right up against it. Now, if you're new to quilting, if you'll notice that I have two. So if you're new to quilting, you can actually put one on the other side, the width of your fabric, and just feed the strip of fabric right through there. It is awesome. But these little, so this is a Husqvarna Viking seam guide, which is very, very nice. Or you can use the open toe seam guide foot, which is very, very nice. Yeah. Oh, that's the one I've already. So yeah, the 5/8 inch seam, trying to explain it. So if you're going to say how big is 5/8 inch, 4/8 is 1/2 an inch. So it's just a little bit bigger than 1/2 an inch. I'm getting a notification to remind you once again about the survey. As you can see, we are very passionate about improving this. So we're going to remind you of the survey. But I love the feet. I love the magnets, the quilting table, comfortable position, and easy does it. So, so the link for the survey just popped up into the comments. So if you want to take a look and get that. We're still about 5 minutes early. So if there is, I think I've covered everything I forgot. So the other feet that I do like is like the edge joining and the edge stitching foot. So I have the edge joining, the edge joining foot. I think I lost mine on when I was traveling. Well, okay, I will answer that question. That's a good one. So again, it has the little guiding blade right in the middle, but this will allow for stitching in the ditch, stitching along a specific position, etc. And the edge stitching foot has these, it's the same with the blade on the side. So that is also extremely helpful when it comes to that kind of precision. Are the magnets safe for the computerized machines, i.e. the Diamond, etc.? So yes, they are. One of the things is once the machine gets to a certain age, so the older machines, you do want to be careful. Where that came from was back in when, like the Designer One days, for instance. The Designer One is like 20-some years old, and it had a floppy drive in there. Floppy drives and magnets do not mix. A magnet will erase a floppy drive like that. So that was one of the real reasons why they had us keeping the magnets away, because they were using floppy drives. They were using the old cards that we used, etc. And all those could get really damaged. As technology changes, however, the magnets are no longer a problem. So on the newer machines, it's not a problem. On the back, when you purchase the magnets here, if you take a look at the accessory catalog or look at the back of the box for the magnets, it will tell you what machines that they are compatible with. So any of the older machines, that is not a not list. You do want to kind of avoid them. There are other alternatives. So if you do have an older machine that cannot take a magnet, there is a product that I used called Moleskin, and to get it at the drugstore. What I don't like about that is it gets very fuzzy very fast, but it is a good starting point. But yeah, I highly recommend the magnets if you can get it. The diamond is safe for the magnets, but if in doubt, ask your dealer or look on the back of the box, and it'll tell you if you can use it. Will you do more detailed classes on specific sewing patterns, i.e. collars, pockets, different kinds of fabrics, etc.? So once again, that is a very good comment for the survey, because that's the kind of stuff, if there's a way to do it, we will definitely work on it. So click on the survey and include that in a recommendation in the survey. But that is a very good question. All right. Any other questions? Because you guys are coming up with some good questions. All right. Well, in that case, I'm going to go ahead and end it here. We only have a few minutes shy of the hour. But I will come back and I will answer some of those more specific questions that I told you I would go back and answer. I'll answer them right after I get out of here. So don't go far. I'm coming. All right. But I want to thank you once again. We will see you for the next Facebook Live. Remember the survey, and I will talk to you all soon. Bye.